Doctor Who Season by Season. Season 2 Review. The second season of Doctor Who ran from late 1964 to mid-1965 for a total of 39 episodes. It was the second season to star William Hartnell as the first Doctor and the second to be produced by Verity Lambert. At the start of the season, the Doctor was once again accompanied by the original companion team, Ian and Barbara, played by William Russell and Jacqueline Hill, and his granddaughter Susan, played by Carol Ann Ford, though this lineup would change considerably over the course of the season. The season begins with Planet of Giants, a three-part story about the time travelers being shrunk down to the size of an inch that was ruthlessly edited down from 4 parts after Lambert that at that length it was just too damn boring. She had a point, frankly, because the three-parter isn't exactly what you'd call an action-packed epic. In fact, while the gigantic sets are fantastic and the effects pretty solid, especially for the time and budget, the actual story is a bit of a snoozer. In fact, I would go so far as to say this is by far the weakest of the season. Fortunately, things improve immediately with the next story, the 6-part epic The Dalek Invasion of Earth. Dalek Invasion is a monumental story. Not only is it the first time a Doctor Who monster came back for an encore, with the Daleks redesigned and also somewhat reconceptualized in order to make them more viable as a recurring foe after their incredible popularity the first time around, but it was also the first story to feature lots of major locating shooting. The only story in Season 1 to feature any location shooting was The Reign of Terror, which had brief inserts of the Doctor walking down a country lane on his way to Paris, which wasn't in fact even William Hartnell but a stand-in. But here the Daleks are seen roaming around a deserted London en masse in scenes that seem amazingly ambitious for a first outing outdoors. Dalek Invasion is also an excellent story, with Terry Nation writing a cracker of a post-apocalypse thriller where the invasion has already taken place, Earth is devastated and the Daleks are in full control and the paltry resistance movement isn't exactly having much luck against them, at least until the Doctor and company show up. Dalek Invasion is remarkably bleak and grim at times, with some scenes that you never in a million years see on the current show, let alone on any show shown at tea time. The climax, which dispenses of the Daleks, is a little bit rushed and convenient, but they just about get away with it, and the story is so good and so gripping it feels churlish to quibble. The other major point of Dalek Invasion is of course the fact that it features the very first companion departure. And thankfully, if it had to be any of the original 3 companions buggering off, I'm very glad it was the often rather irritating Susan rather than the frankly awesome Ian and Babs. Nonetheless, it's a big moment for the show. The next story is a little quickie, The Rescue, the first 2-parter since Edge of Destruction in Season 1 and again written by David Whittaker. As with his last effort, this is a character piece with an overall goal in mind. The point of Edge was to turn the regulars from wary strangers into friends, and the point of The Rescue is to introduce the show's first new companion, in the form of space-age teen Vicki, played fantastically by Maureen O'Brien. Let me put my cards on the table right now, I fucking love Vicki. I think she's fantastic and I think the actress is fantastic and so far ahead of Susan it is not funny. She's adorable, she's funny, she's cute, she's endearingly clumsy and, despite her futuristic origins, so incredibly normal and otherwise relatable. She's the girl next door, but she's also brave and also actually enjoys the adventures, and indeed often goes looking for them, rather than whining about them as her predecessor so often did. She's one of my favorite companions, and one of the most underrated, and the team of her, Ian and Barbara and the first Doctor, is one of my absolute all-time favorites. As for The Rescue, as a story it's no great shakes but it's watchable and enjoyable and it's a great showcase for Vicki and O'Brien. And in my opinion, the ending, in which the Doctor invites Vicki to join the crew, is probably the best new companion joins scene in the entire history of the show. Vicki is an orphan with nowhere to go, who's finally found a home. At the same time, of course, There's something inherently rather alarming and frightening about the TARDIS. Well, there was back then, before companions could nip back home for tea and biscuits every 5 fucking seconds. Thanks for nothing, Moftwat. It's a magical scene. The next story is The Romans, which is the first historical story of Season 2. The Romans is a solid and enjoyable story that plays with humor more so than any other story so far, though it's not strictly a comedy and there's plenty of genuine danger in the situation to boot. The new look TARDIS crew are in sparkling form, and it's all very enjoyable. This story has come in for latter-day misplaced PC whining, sorry I mean criticism, that there's nothing funny about Nero chasing Barbara around the palace trying to rape her. I mean, for fuck's sake. This is carry-on Benny Hill stuff. And the implication and overt childishness of the character and the scene is that Nero wouldn't know what to fucking do with Barbara if he caught her, for crying out loud. Barbara is threatened with implied sexual assault in a startling number of stories, it has to be said, and it's as clear as mustard from Jacqueline Hill's performance that she is more exasperated and embarrassed by Nero's attentions than she is threatened by him. Fuck me. These PC loonies try to suck the fucking fun out of everything, don't they? The next story is the 6-part The Web Planet, which is almost certainly the season's most controversial installment. A slice of 60s weirdness, shot while the entire crew were apparently high on magic mushrooms. The Web Planet famously features no human characters other than the regulars in a story about our guys getting caught up in a fight between giant butterflies and giant ants. I hated The Web Planet when I was a kid, and many fans still do today, but I'm going to be a contrary bastard again and say that I actually, in fact, genuinely rather like it now. The DVD release totally turned me around this story. Oh, it's dated, no doubt about that, and a bit slow at times, and it requires major suspension of disbelief, and yet I find it so surreal, so weird, so ambitious and just so amazingly bloody strange that it has a kind of hypnotically compelling effect on me. Some of the scenes are really striking, too, such as when the butterfly men open their wings and actually take fucking flight. Plus, there's the regulars. I dunno, man, maybe it's just this team because there's not one with this crew I can't and don't watch. It's just fascinating and fun to see them coping with the most alien environment ever seen in the show. I like it a lot and would certainly not include it in any worst lists. The next story is another historical, The Crusade, but this one's a lot more serious than the Romans. Fortunately it's even more excellent and in fact is a strong contender for the best of the historical stories alongside Marco Polo. The Crusade puts the Doctor and company in the middle of, well, the Crusades. You probably got that right. The Doctor and Vicki get to stay in the court of King Richard, fantastically played by the always fantastic Julian Glover, where everyone inexplicably thinks Vicki is a dude just because she doesn't wear a dress. Are these people fucking blind or what? Ian and Barbara don't have as easy a time of it. However, as Barbara is kidnapped by a seriously sicko villain and Ian, being the absolute badass that he is, goes marching off across the desert to rescue her and fuck that guy over big time if he ever gets his hands on him. And indeed this is one of the stories I mentioned earlier, where there is a clear implication of the threat of sexual violence against Babs, and she sure don't look as cheerful as she was when getting chased around Nero's palace. So fuck you. Sadly, though fortunately in other ways I guess, The Crusade is the only story to be affected by the notorious archive purge that has cost us so many 60s episodes of Doctor Who. Episodes 2 and 4 no longer exist, though the audio can be found on the Lost in Time DVD set along with the existing episodes 1 and 3, which are both excellent. That set also has a really cool option to watch the missing eps get a brief linkage and explanation by William Russell, actually in character as Ian reflecting on his adventure. It's fucking glorious. The Crusade is a superb piece of drama, So mature and so gripping and so far ahead of the immature drivel pumped out in the name of Doctor Who these days that one can only wonder how these people sleep at night when a 50-year-old black and white show then actually seen as nothing more than a kid's show is so much more fucking grown up than their gobshite. Answers on a postcard please. The next story of the season is the Space Museum, which is another fairly unpopular story. I can see why, as following a cool and weird Twilight Zone style first episode it turns into a bit of a corridor runaround that doesn't live up to its potential. And yet, I can watch it. Again, it's this crew. Ian is in full badass mode, beating the crap out of people left, right and center and waving a gun around like he really wants to shoot some motherfucker. And Vicki is in fantastic form too, showing the pathetic rebels how it's done by outwitting a computer, getting hold of lots of guns and leading a fucking revolution practically all by herself. Marry me. The penultimate story of the season is The Chase. This is another often unpopular with fans, but fuck those anal retards I say. I make no apologies, I love The Chase, always have done, always will do. It is in fact one of my favorite Hartnell stories and one I often put on to cheer myself up with if I'm in a bad mood. It's as stupid as fuck but so goddamn good-natured I just can't help but love it. As the Daleks chase the TARDIS screw all over time and space and still can't successfully kill a doddery old man, two 60s teachers and a teenage girl, none of whom even so much as carries a weapon. What a bunch of useless assholes. The Chase is a hoot from start to finish, and my absolute favorite episode is the one everyone else hates the most, the Haunted House episode. This episode is freaking hilarious. From Ian's wonderfully resigned, weary the girls have gone when he and the Doctor come back from their search of the house to find Babs and Vicki have, as ever, fucked off somewhere else, to that bit where they find the Frankenstein's monster lying on a table. It gets up and the Doctor just sort of wordlessly turns and nips off quickly up the stairs leaving Ian still standing there. Fricking wonderful. The Chase however is also remembered for a less funny reason. Namely, this is the one where the best school teachers ever leave the show for good. The wonderful William Russell and Jacqueline Hill take their leave as Ian and Barbara in a wonderful, lengthy, funny and sad set of scenes that really do change the show forever. It's heartbreaking. Bear with me a moment, I have something in my eye, alright? The Chase also introduces a new companion, Stephen Taylor, an astronaut from the future played by Peter Purvis, though he only appears in the last episode, with Purvis actually playing a different character, a dumbass American in the Empire State Building scenes earlier in the same story, and the next story is his real fully fledged debut. The final story of the season is The Time Meddler. The Time Meddler is another monumental story. The first time a historical story is married with a science fiction one, and, even bigger, the introduction of another of the Doctor's race for the very first time in the form of the Monk, even if he's not named as a Time Lord here. Above and beyond all that toss, though, it's just a fantastic story, my favorite Hartnell in fact. It's gently paced but never dull, with a wonderfully rich atmosphere. Douglas Camfield's direction is impressive and how they conjure up a medieval seaside locale atmosphere all shot in a cramped 60s studio is frankly remarkable. It is striking too how much of the characterization, and Peter Butterworth's performance, of the Monk is oddly similar to the Second Doctor. The regulars are on great form, with Stephen making an excellent proper debut and Vicki effortlessly making the move from being the Susan replacement to the show's major female lead, plus she's completely bloody adorable too. I may have mentioned this before. They make an excellent team and it's rather criminal their time in the TARDIS together was so brief. This is a great story and a great end to a great season, my favorite of the Hartnell and the 60s and in fact my fifth favorite season of all time, with one of the best TARDIS crews. I can give season 2 nothing less than an A+.